The language of avoidance is coded in distance. They ask for space, they claim they need independence, they frame their withdrawal as a necessity for their well-being. But beneath these requests lies a truth they cannot articulate and may not even consciously recognize. The avoidant does not crave solitude for its own sake. They crave the feeling of safety that solitude provides when intimacy feels like a threat to their psychological survival. Understanding this distinction changes everything about how their behavior is interpreted and how the pattern can potentially be interrupted. The illusion that distance equals protection. When the avoidant creates space, they are not celebrating freedom. They are managing terror. Closeness triggers a specific kind of panic rooted in early relational wounding where vulnerability led to pain, where dependency meant disappointment, where emotional expression was met with dismissal or overwhelm. The avoidant learned that the only reliable source of safety was themselves, that needing others was dangerous, that intimacy was a trap that would inevitably result in abandonment or engulfment. So they retreat not because they genuinely prefer isolation, but because isolation feels safer than the alternative. The space they demand is not about wanting to be alone. It is about wanting to avoid the vulnerability that comes with being known, with being needed, with mattering to someone in ways they cannot control. When they say they need space, what they are really saying is that closeness feels unsafe and they do not have the tools to communicate this without pushing the other person away entirely. The tragedy is that the space they create often reinforces the very fear that drives them to create it. By withdrawing, they confirm their belief that they are better off alone, that connection is unsustainable, that intimacy will always end in pain. Subscribe if you need to understand the real, emotional needs behind confusing relationship patterns. It helps you respond with clarity instead of confusion. The safety they actually need but cannot request. What the avoidant truly wants is not distance, but the experience of closeness without consequence. They want to be seen without being exposed. They want to be cared for without being consumed. They want to matter without becoming responsible for someone else's emotional regulation. This is an impossible paradox given their current relational framework, which is why they default to space as the only solution they can imagine. But the safety they seek cannot be found in isolation. It can only be found in a relationship where vulnerability is not punished, where boundaries are respected without requiring total withdrawal, where their need for autonomy does not trigger abandonment. The avoidant needs consistency without pressure, presence without demands, acceptance without judgment. They need someone who can hold space for their fear, without taking it personally, who can remain emotionally stable while they oscillate between closeness and distance, who can demonstrate through repeated experience that intimacy does not equal annihilation. This kind of safety cannot be requested because requesting it would require the very vulnerability they are trying to avoid. So they ask for space instead, hoping unconsciously that the other person will somehow understand the deeper need beneath the surface request. The devastating cycle of seeking safety through abandonment. The cruelest irony of avoidant attachment is that the strategy meant to protect them from pain actually guarantees it. By creating space to feel safe, they isolate themselves from the very connection that could provide genuine safety. They push away people who care about them, convinced that the caring will eventually turn into control or rejection. They sabotage relationships that offer stability because stability feels too good to be true, too vulnerable to trust. The space they create becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where they prove to themselves again and again that they are better off alone, even as the loneliness confirms their deepest wound, that they are fundamentally unworthy of sustained love. What they want is not space. What they want is the impossible experience of being loved without having to risk being hurt. And until they can recognize that true safety is not found in distance, but in the courage to remain present despite fear, they will continue to conflate isolation with protection, continue to push away what they most deeply need, continue to seek safety in the very pattern that keeps them perpetually unsafe.